Hey everybody, welcome back for another episode of Real Hawk Talk. This is Brian Nemhauser at Hawk Blogger on Twitter. You're gonna be forced to see my face this week. The Seahawks did enough to keep me from putting the bag back over my head, but who knows? Anything can happen on this show. That's why you're here. Let me bring in the fellas. This week we've got a strong crew. Evan Hill at Evan SEA on Twitter. How are you?
I'm doing well, and I feel like this is a little bit of a weird situation because I cannot remember the last time we had a 3-person show on a Wednesday night. This feels pretty rare, doesn't it?
It does, and I think there's addition by subtraction is a common theme, and this might be one of those times, we get a little bit more Jeff Simmons, at Real Jeff Simmons up there in Canada. As we've talked about, we need to get more Jeff Simmons on this show. So this is a good chance for him to step up. There's a lot of pressure on you though this week, Jeff. You got to carry your weight.
I listened to your show last week with the bag on your head and Dayna hosting, and holy shit, that was a good episode. And I thought you guys might fire me. It was such a good episode where Brian came out of nowhere with that bag switching sides, and Nathan was really good. I didn't think you guys would bring me back, to be honest. That was arguably the best Real Hawk. I think Derek called it the best Real Hawk Talk.
Well, hold up. You're the founder.
You're the OG.
So maybe I'm meant for a producer role. I don't know.
How did this show start?
So me and Brian were always talking about me writing for the blog when I was in media. And I had a contract with a media company where I wasn't allowed to do outside. So when I ended up leaving that company, I reached out to Brian, and I had done some writing a little bit here and there. But I remember pitching Brian that as crazy as Seahawks fucking Twitter is, Seahawks Twitter is nuts. Really was a notable podcast for the Seahawks. There were some other field goals ones and some other ones, which I just found kind of odd. So I said, why don't we start one, see what happens? And Brian, under his leadership, ended up bringing you and Nathan on. And I think it's really transformed from, if you saw some of our earlier episodes, we had some good stuff, but it was definitely a work in progress. And getting the 4 of us and then Dayna, we've really developed. So I just remember blindly pitching it. He was like, okay, why not? And then since then, I think we're 4 years in. It's crazy how much we've changed.
Yeah, it's been a fun ride.
Are we 4 or 3 years in?
I have no idea. I have no idea.
Anyways, I was just interested to hear that story officially.
Can I do a little bit of a flex? Can I
do a flex?
I mean, so one of the benefits of spending ungodly amounts of time obsessing about the Seahawks is that if enough people pay attention, there's some products that want to get, mentioned in the process. And so sometimes you get little treats. And so one of them, I do want to thank Simply Seattle. This sweatshirt is amazing. Love working with them. And I know a lot of you guys got some amazing sweatshirts last week and different gear. But what I want to mention this week, if you haven't seen it, it's just about to get released. Cutwater. I'm going to see if you can see this. Cutwater Distillery is releasing a Seahawks. Let me see if I can find the best view of it. A Seahawks Vodka Mule. And they sent me my own 4-pack. And so let's get the sound here for people listening.
Ooh, that was some ASMR type of stuff.
Oh. It is excellent. I've already done 3 of them, so this is my last. These are going to be very popular, man. They're super. The packaging is awesome, super branded. And as you guys know, I'm a Moscow Mule fanatic, so they really hit the target market well. I've been trying to convince them we need to partner legitimately, because I don't know if there's a show other than Matador Nachos. I don't know if there is a brand and product that we could better sell than Seahawks branded Moscow Mule. So we'll see what we can do there. But in the meantime, definitely want to give folks a chance. If you haven't already, take a look for Cutwater's Vodka Mules, Seahawks Vodka Mules. They're awesome.
How many does it take to get like a little buzzed? I'm asking the really important questions right now.
It's hard to say with you because on one hand, I think of you as a lightweight.
A droplet? A single droplet touches my tongue?
You kind of like have an IV of alcohol going. So it's hard to know like what it would take for you. But it's 7% alcohol. So it's a legit drink. For me, probably 3 or 4. For you, I don't know. Hard to say. I mean,
real vodka talk
on game day. You know that you and I have a different tolerance level. So,
where can people get it? Is it just going to be everywhere, or
like they didn't? That is one of the flaws because we haven't been able to do the full partnership. They didn't really give me that information. It's going to be available starting this month, but they did not make it clear where. So I'm assuming you should be looking on your store shelves. If nowhere else, Cutwater, check their website and they should have some information there. But it's good stuff. So guys, let's switch gears and talk a little bit about the Seahawks because I think people probably want to know about them. You guys did an excellent post-game show. I listened to it. I was jogging this week. It was fantastic because I was not on it. I would have absolutely ruined that show because I was still in a mood about the Seahawks. But I'll just start by sharing like. I didn't walk away from that game feeling a lot different about the Seahawks. I would say I don't feel any different. I think that's actually fair. I would not say I feel any different about the Seahawks after that game than I did before. But the door is open. Like the door is open for them to now, I think in this game coming up this week against this Washington football team to actually accomplish something that could change my perspective on this team. Beating that Jets team 40-3, I don't know what that proves. If you can put up points against this Washington defense, then I think that's something to pay attention to. That is something that you can build on. And the Seahawks have one of the toughest closing schedules in the NFL when it comes to opposing defenses. They're playing Washington, the Rams, and the 49ers. Those are all 3 legit defenses. And I just want to start there. Like, for me, what I need to see starting now is that the offense can win a game regardless of the quality of defense they're playing. And I have not seen them do that yet this year. The defense, shutting down the Washington offense, if the Seahawks were to win 10-3, honestly, that wouldn't change my opinion of the Seahawks that much. But if, Seahawks score 20, 25, 30, that might. So I want to start there and Evan, get your perspective on did your opinion change at all based on this past game? And if not, what are you looking for to kind of rekindle your belief in this team going forward?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I'm in the same boat as you, that I don't think it or even came close to materially changing my view of this team right now. But I do think it's important to recognize that they did what they should have done. And I know we talked a lot about this in the post game. Yes, it was the Jets. Yes, it was Sam Darnold. Yes, it was Adam Gase. But they did what they should have done. And I think recognizing that as an important step, it puts them on a good path for progress. Now, I completely agree with you. This upcoming week is going to be a huge test. People need to really make sure we're not underselling this Washington defense. We're talking, a top 3 unit in the NFL, maybe number 1 with how good their pass rush is. That's how nasty they are. Chase Young has been everything they've hoped for and more in the NFL. They have a couple of other solid edge rushers that names are escaping me right now, but yeah, no, they're a really, really good team. I don't want to just echo what you said, but I do share many of the same feelings, as you when it comes to this offense. Like the strongest part of this team, or what should be the strongest part of this team, is the offense. They have a top 3 quarterback, top 2 quarterback in the NFL. They have Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf, stud running back room. Rashad Penny's coming back, a good offensive line for the first time in a decade. This team, this offense, when they're functioning as they should, is absolutely capable of taking this team to a Super Bowl and winning it. This defense is not something that, can be the strength of a team in terms of bringing them to a Super Bowl. We know that. That's obvious. But I think you do make a strong point, Brian. This is a really good Washington defense. These are the types of defenses we're going to see in the playoffs. We are 3 games away from, or 4 weeks, because I think there's a bye week break. We're 3 or 4 weeks away from the playoffs. It's really, really critical that this offense gets on a good trend and gets hot and gets functioning correctly entering the playoffs. Because if they're not hot, they're not established, and they're not really prepared, they're going to flounder, and they're going to be a one and done type of playoff team. And that would be a real, real bummer for the talent that this offense has.
Yeah, Jeff, I mean, interested in your perspective on what do you need to see against this Washington defense? And if you get specifically, like, what would be encouraging for you to see and out of the norm?
I think you guys both hit on it. I think this 2-week stretch coming up here really impacts how I feel about this team going into the playoffs, and arguably 3-week stretch, because the Seahawks, we've seen improvement from the defense. I know the offenses they've played haven't been great, but we've seen enough that they can get by being just okay, plays here and there. We need to see Russell Wilson and the offense perform against good defenses. I think that impacts their ability to have us feeling confident going into the playoffs, where they're probably not going to be a number 1 seed. That seems out of the question at this point. Green Bay has that pretty comfortably locked up, I believe. So Washington, if you haven't watched them or haven't seen them play, I did a story a bit on Chase Young this week for one of my writing articles. They are scary on the defensive line. Remember what the Giants did to these guys a couple weeks ago? These guys are remarkably better on the front four. They're a lot like San Francisco last year, where they have first-round picks all over. They have Chase Young, who's like that Jenga piece, like the guy who put them over the top. He's dominant, like Evan said. But they also have Montez Sweat, who was a guy that we thought the Seahawks maybe should have taken the year they took Collier. They moved back and they took Collier. They have Jonathan Allen and Payne inside, who are both first-round picks, both top 15 picks. A lot like San Francisco last year. They're just dominant. They're not only like aggressive as pass rushers, they're physical. And we don't know if Brandon Shell's going to play. And the next week they play one of the best defenses in the NFL. So for me, the big question about this team's ceiling is, can Russell Wilson and this offense operate against a good defense? Because against Buffalo, against the Rams, against the Giants, they've wilted. And to me, we've talked about it all year. The thing that brings this team to its ceiling is this offense. And I had a buddy today, he wrote me, he likes to gamble, and he sent me the odds in the NFC. He said, the Seahawks are kind of looking pretty, and I still believe in them. Their defense is getting better. I believe in Russ. Should I pull the trigger? And I'm like, are you out of your mind? Have you watched this team play? But if they can – what?
Pull the trigger on what? What bet?
Betting on the Seahawks to win the NFC.
The NFC?
He said the odds are great, and he believes in Russell, and he thinks they match up well with Green Bay. I said, are you out of your mind? He liked them. This 2-week stretch to me dictates the ceiling. The Jets thing, as Evan said, was relieving. The opponent sucks, but it was just nice to see the offense and the defense play well at the same time, and Russell look like a quarterback again.
I don't know what the odds are, but I actually think that's a great bet. I mean,
they're like the 4th ranked team behind New Orleans and the Rams. Seattle and Tampa are like similar level, and he's like, I believe in Russell. He's been there. They have the talent. Jamal's coming on. I need to see this game, especially how they perform against a good defense.
Well, you know what? Just to go off on a sidetrack for one moment, you know what feels weird is the NFC doesn't really have like a top, far and away established team that is like the superior contender.
No.
Like I think we're all in agreement that the Packers are probably the best team in the NFC, but at the same time, the Packers have very clear flaws, very clear weaknesses, and they are beatable. As scared as I am of playing them in Lambeau, they are absolutely a beatable football team. The Seahawks can beat the Packers on any given Sunday. I do believe the odds are long in Lambeau, but honestly, it's a good year to be in the NFC because if I was in the AFC and we had to go up against those Chiefs,
Maybe Buffalo.
Well, that's what's so aggravating. I mean, I'm gonna get the bag out again. I'm so pissed. Like,
talk about it.
This is the season that's been given to the Seahawks on a silver platter. There is no team in the NFC that you should feel worried about. Even if you do have to travel, other than Green Bay, are you worried about going to an empty Superdome in New Orleans or a Tampa Bay like empty stadium or LA? Like these are all, even if you have to travel, these aren't, other than Green Bay, there's no real concerning place to play. There's no team that's dominant. You had the easiest friggin' schedule you can possibly imagine. I mean, just so easy. And then here's the thing. We'll talk about this some more, but the defense they're better. They're good enough now. They have crossed, as far as I'm concerned, they have crossed into the level of play where the Seahawks defense is good enough paired with an elite offense to win a Super Bowl. They're definitely at that level from my perspective. So they have all this stuff going and they just Russell, Shoddy, the offense laid a friggin' egg like for the last 6-8 weeks, and so that just really it's a wasted opportunity. And now what I wrote about on Monday is the only thing that's going to like rekindle my faith, really rekindle it, is for them to get to the Super Bowl. Because here's the thing, if they get all the way to the NFC Championship and they lose in Green Bay, and that game would have been either one would have been in Seattle, or two, the Seahawks would have had a bye, because if just by winning that Giants game, this season will not have been a success by my definition, because of how badly they will have botched their chance to win a Super Bowl. Like that just doesn't happen very often. And so that's why I'm so aggravated, because it's just been so easy, and yet they've made it hard. And that's just typical of what Seattle's done for the last few years.
And 5-0 was the best start in franchise history, right?
It tied it, I thought.
No, I think they were 4-0 in 2013. I think they lost in week 5. I think that was the best start they've ever had.
It's really frustrating to see them fuck away that start. It just sucks. It hurts me.
It does. But here, let me switch gears a little bit, because I've done a lot of the woe with me stuff. I lied, and I want to admit my lie. So I said there's nothing about the Jets game that I thought was encouraging. There were actually two things. One, regardless of how bad the Jets were, Russell played his best game in, I would say, 2 months. People were like, oh, he played well against the Cardinals, when they won that game. Not from my perspective. I thought he played good, but he seemed timid. He seemed decisive in the Jets game. The ball was coming out fast. It was accurate for the most part. He could have had more, if David Moore had caught the ball. Like there's things. I think he played a solid, commanding, confident game. So that was one thing that I don't care who was against. I liked seeing that. The other thing that I guarantee you nobody else is talking about, guys, the one thing that the Jets do well is defend the run. They actually have one of the best run defenses in the NFL. Very quietly, the Seahawks dominated them on the ground. They were blowing open wide open holes. Carlos Hyde had a good game. He had some good cuts. He and Chris Carson, even Chris Carson's big run, how many yards before contact on those runs? Those guys were they were blowing open big holes. And yes, Brandon Shell being back is part of that. That's great. But I don't think that was it, because he only played a half. So I thought the Jets run defense is better than the Washington run defense. And so to me, that's a really interesting thing going into this week that can counteract. Maybe you don't have Brandon Shell. Maybe your pass protection can't hold up against this pass rush. I think it could be really encouraging to see the Seahawks have a balance of being able to, and you guys know I'm not like a stupid, let's balance it for the sake of balance. But I think keeping this team off balance by running and passing could be a key this week. So I'm hopeful about that potential this week.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, because one of the key takeaways I took away from the Jets game was that Russell was getting the ball out of his hands faster than we've probably seen him do it all year, to be honest. Yeah. Just off of the eye test, like he was getting rid of the ball quickly. He didn't take any sacks either, which was a kind of like an under the radar stat that was a big step forward, in my opinion. So I agree with you. Running the ball may present some opportunities this week, but I'm much less focused on this offensive line in pass pro and a lot more focused on scheming players and receivers open and Russell getting it out of his hands quickly.
Yeah. You know, Jeff, the other thing that would be nice to see, we didn't have to see it in the Jets game because the Jets are so bad. We haven't had to see the Seahawks really adjust their game plan on offense. And that's what's driven us all crazy. I mean, I was just seeing like red listening to Shoddy talk about, oh yeah, we really, looking back, we should have adjusted when the Giants were taking away the deep ball. No shit.
Future head coach Brian Schottenheimer right there.
So like they did the short game that worked. The Jets never were able to take it away. It'll be interesting. I don't know how much you guys have looked. Jeff, you said you watched the Washington team. Their secondary, like Ronald Darby's their like big corner, and Darby like is a guy that DK Metcalf assassinated last year in Philly. The stats weren't big, but that's because DK dropped a couple passes. But like, they don't have a great secondary in terms of who's back there. You know, if they're getting rid of the ball quickly and the pass rush can't get home, you know, what's your assessment of the Seahawks' ability to move the ball through the air in kind of a quick passing game against this defense?
It has to be the way they play this game. If they do the long dropbacks, hope for deep balls, they're setting up for failure. Because, yeah, you said it perfectly. I read your tail of the tape today, Brian. Their secondary is not special. They're purely reflective of how good the front four is and how physical they are in the front seven. They play really hard. And a lot of Ron Rivera's teams in the past have kind of been built like that. They never really had good secondaries in Carolina, and Seattle's had success throwing the ball and maybe running it at them. But if you're going to do deep passing and lengthy dropbacks against an offensive line that struggle, and they're not a blitz-heavy team, they win with the front four. I said they're a lot like San Francisco last year. When you watch them play, like they're not only good at pass rush, but they're very physical. Like they will knock guys off the line of scrimmage. They pancake people. You need to do the quick game. And their linebackers are not great in coverage. They have average linebackers. They don't have a special player there. We say it a lot, like this is a game where I think Will Dissly could stand out. This is a game where quick passes to DK on slants, on curl routes, things that they can get the ball out of their hands. Sort of what we saw last week where they weren't too reliant. Other than that one David Moore pass, I don't know if there was a ton of deep throws. And I think that's how Seattle has to approach this game.
Evan, just want to confirm for you. I can't say for sure it was the best in this regard, but just looking quickly, Russell Wilson's time to throw in that game was on average 2.41 seconds, which was like ranked around 13th in the NFL last week, just in that week. His time for every other week this season combined was 2.79. So 0.4 seconds more. That ranks 38th in the NFL over the course of the season. So
that's a big difference.
13th last week, 38th for the season. That's a huge difference in how you defend this team.
Yeah, the only thing so Jeff, I agree with your assessment in terms of Washington's defensive strengths, but I will call out one player who has been exceeding expectations for them, and that's Cameron Curl, their safety, drafted out of the 7th round this year. He's been playing really, really well for them. Actually had a defensive touchdown last week, if you were watching the game. So they got Ronald Darby, but they're not completely inept.
No, they're not bad.
Yeah. They're not the strength of the defense, but they're also not something to scoff at, I think.
No, they're not a weakness. Like they're not a deficiency, but they certainly are not a dominant, super talented group. Their nickelback, and especially, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, is not particularly great. And I don't see a guy that stops DK. Ronald Darby is not a guy that.
Kendall Fuller.
No, he's their other corner. Their slot. I can look it up if you're interested.
Greg Stroman, maybe. I don't know.
Stroman.
That name sounds made up.
No, I'm being dead serious.
Oh.
He's a quarterback for them.
It is. Let me see really quickly.
Because I can't think of who the other I know they've had a lot of injuries actually in their secondary.
Is Jimmy Moreland, I'm pretty sure, is their nickel. Yes, Jimmy Moreland.
Oh. Oh good God.
Yeah, he's not great. So yeah, I mean anyway, I think it'll be interesting this week to see if they can run the ball. I think it's gonna be interesting if they can do some quick passes. I think if you're Washington, you're certainly going to be counting on them doing quick passes. The other thing, guys, is unless I'm mistaken, and that is definitely possible, is I don't know that Ron Rivera has had a huge amount of success in defending Russell Wilson and Pete Carroll. There's a couple games I can remember, like the first game of 2013 where Russell had to hit Curse for a touchdown at the end.
That game.
But in general, I feel like Russell's and the Seahawks have done pretty well on offense against Pete.
Yeah, and for those who don't remember, the Seahawks in Carolina, it felt like they played every year. And those games were always tight, but Russell did do well against them. And yeah, what happened here? The difference was they had Luke Kuechly and Thomas Davis in their peak. And those guys were really hard for Russell to play against. And this team is built very differently. They don't have linebackers like that who can run with Russell and who can take away the middle of the field. And they always had kind of weaknesses in the secondary, similar built to this team where Russell's deep ball, but they've never really faced a front four like this. And it's kind of a different built team, but yeah, Seattle knows Ron Rivera's defense. Jack Del Rio is their defensive coordinator, who's not like he's like a Ken Norton kind of guy. Like he actually hired Ken Norton. And he was the defensive coordinator in Super Bowls, the Seahawks Super Bowl win over Denver. So he was the head coach, or he was the defensive coordinator in Denver. So the Seahawks know this defense inside and out. And Russell dominated that game too. So to me, yeah, Rivera's scheme and his defense has never given Russell trouble. Even games they've lost, Russell did pretty well. So there was that playoff game where they almost came back. There was that game where Greg Olsen scored like the last second touchdown. The Seahawks were up huge and blew the game. But yeah, I think Russell does know this defensive scheme very well.
All right, guys. Nathan's not here. It's safe.
Talk to me. What are you going to say?
I think I know where you're going.
I do too.
I mean, truthfully, do you want to see them run the ball a little bit in this game?
I want them to go with the hot hand, whatever it is, because I'm not convinced that their run defense. Did you give some stats earlier? How bad is it, or where's their run defense rank? Do we know?
We do, and I can share. It's good. It's not terrible, but it's not as good as the Jets' run defense was. For example, I think that they are probably a top 10 run defense, and I can tell you for sure they are 9th in the NFL in rushing yards against and 10th in the NFL in yards per rush.
Actually, we all forgot to mention, this is huge news. Our running back one returns this week. Rashad Penny is back in the lineup.
There's some interesting injury news to talk about for sure. And I think it's as good a time as any to bring up Rashad Penny. I mean, are you expecting he's going to play?
He better. Yeah.
Jeff, you expecting he's going to play?
Well, I think he should. I think this is a time where I've been saying all year where I am nervous of like how they can fit him in. But like it seems like the Seahawks are saving Chris Carson for the playoffs. It just seemed he got 11
Thank you.
last game. He got 11 carries last game. And a couple things. If you want to save Carson, and if you kind of want to see what Penny has got, because he might be your feature back next year if Carson walks. It's a pretty good time to give him some snaps.
Chris Carson is not healthy. He's not healthy. No matter the lies that come out of Pete Carroll's mouth, Chris Carson is not healthy. I would not be opposed, and maybe this is a radical thought, to sitting Carson for like 1 to 2 weeks.
You wouldn't play him in the Rams game?
I wouldn't play him this week. I don't know about Rams. You need a healthy Chris Carson for the playoffs.
But how do you know that resting him is going to make any difference? Like the injury he might have might be the kind that it's not going to be better until he gets, an off season.
If that's the case, that's really disappointing, and I see our playoff hopes being limited, frankly.
Oh, that's another conversation. But I guess, back to the question though. Dominant pass rush from the opponents. You may or may not have your starting right tackle. Brandon Shell, I would give him a 60-40 chance of playing. I think he's going to play, but I think it's questionable. Thin depth behind him. You've got at least Carson and Hyde, and you may also have Penny. Is this a game where you say, you know what? Yeah, we're going to go a little heavier on the run mix than we have in some of these past games, and be a little bit less pass centric than we've been. Is this the game to zig when we've been zagging this whole time, and bring in a heavy package, bring in an extra tight end, and like do something that we haven't done all season long?
Can I give you a cop-out answer?
No.
I'm going to give you a real answer. You give what they take you, but more important, or what you get, you take what they give you, but more importantly, you have to be willing to adapt quickly in game. We haven't seen that yet. So that's my answer. If they come out with a super pass heavy approach and it's just not working, Russell is off, we have to see them adapt. We have to see them give Carson more opportunities. We have not seen them quickly adapt like that in game yet. We need to see that this Sunday.
You know what, Jeff? It's fascinating to me. I almost think that is the core issue that we've been, at least the three of us, have been angry about more than whether it's running or passing. Even back to the game where it broke Evan in Dallas. I don't know how much of it was about the fact that they kept running versus the fact they were doing something that wasn't working and weren't changing the plan in the middle. If they'd been running and scoring a bunch of points, I'm guessing Evan wouldn't have given a shit if they had done that. And so I think it gets caught up in this whole run versus pass thing, but like, do what's working. And if it's not, adjust.
Yeah, absolutely. And me and Brian, I think, are closer aligned than maybe Evan is on this. I'm not like a run versus pass. I'm more of a play to the opponent and play to your strengths kind of guy. Some teams, it makes sense to run a lot if you don't have a passing game. Some teams, if you're the Chiefs, you should be passing 60, 70% of the time. That's your strength. And the thing that obviously upset Evan in that one Dallas game and upset us is that you're right. The coaches seem like they're beating their head against the wall when it's very obvious what's happening. And that's what the story was in that Giants game. And roster-wise, this team is very similar. They don't have much of an offense. They don't have a passing offense. They're the guy that keyed their running game. He's probably not going to play this week. Antonio Gibson, he's out. So it's going to be defense, try to slow the game down, try to slow this offense down. And yeah, they have to. The best coaches are able to either adjust in game or adjust with different game plans week to week. And we talk about different coaches a lot between us and Nathan. And the thing that this staff has been so bad at is just they either take to halftime to adjust or they don't adjust at all. And to me, they have to have a plan B quickly in their pocket, and they have to have it ready to go, because this is the front four that can just blow up a game. And if you try to win one way, they can end the game very quickly. Because
sorry, go on, Justin.
No, that's what.
So a couple quick pieces here that are interesting. So one, they come out. Pete Carroll even mentioned it this week. I think it was even today. Like they do run some of their plays at the beginning, some of their scripted plays, to figure out how a defense is playing them. So this isn't like a new concept, but it's almost crazy that like either they're doing that and not learning the right lessons, or ignoring what they're learning, because they do seem to just not figure out quickly enough, and often not until after the game, this season at least, what to do. But I wanted to highlight a couple things about the Washington defense before we move back. I want to talk about the injury updates too, because there's a lot of juicy like Seahawks news there. Jeff, you read my tail of tape, so you'll know this, but surprising to me, Evan, what I found.
Are you assuming I didn't read it? I
am assuming you didn't read it.
Why would you assume such a thing?
I had to read it after last week. I had to see how you live up to last week's.
Yeah, I actually did skim it, but I don't remember a single word.
Last week's was good. I had to see what you do.
Yes, I've put a few more words on paper, for digital paper this week. But it was interesting to me to find out that, one, Washington has not allowed more than 20 points in the last 4 weeks. Okay, that sounds really good. Great defense. They also haven't played a good team offensively in the last 4 weeks. And if you look back, there have been 5 times that Washington has played an offense that is ranked in the top above 20th in the NFL in terms of offensive efficiency, like DVOA. They are 0-5 in those games, and every single one of those offenses scored over 30 points. Over 30 points, not like 20, 25, over 30 points. So this defense, even from a DVOA perspective, which, by the way, EPA, which is the nerd's favorite number, is not opponent adjusted. So you could play the Jets 16 games in a season, and your EPA would look fantastic, and there'd be no difference than any other EPA. DVOA for Football Outsiders is opponent adjusted. And they rank the Washington football team's defense, I think, 4th. It's still very high. But if you really look at it just practically, like when they've faced good offenses, they've given up a ton of points. They gave up 30 to the Lions. They gave up 30 to the Ravens, which has not been a great offensive team this year. They gave up 30 to the Rams, and 30 to the Cardinals. So I'm not saying exactly 30, but 30 plus. So this team can give up points, and I just wonder a little bit if they're maybe a little more overrated than we think. Is there a chance that they're a little bit feeding on the weaker teams, and maybe not as crazy as we think they are?
I'm not willing to buy into that theory, because I thought really highly of the Seahawks, and then they lost to the Giants at home. So beating any team the way they're beating teams defensively, in my opinion, is an accomplishment. They're doing it, unlike the Seahawks.
Yeah, and the thing I would add is that a lot of those numbers came before Chase Young kind of found himself. Chase Young started the year with a hip injury. In the last 4 to 5 games, he's kind of found himself, and has, like, the last 2 games especially, where they beat the 49ers and Steelers, pretty good teams, he's been the best player in the field in both games. And early in the year, he was kind of a non-factor, and they were looking at him like, why didn't they draft Tua, or why didn't they draft Herbert? Mm-hmm. That was a big conversation going around. But I think that's really – and they're a new scheme and a lot of new players. They're coming together. They were probably just figuring things out, like Seattle. We saw it in Seattle. They took them 8 or 9 weeks before they can communicate and get guys on the field together. And obviously, Seattle's offense has a much better offense than Nick Mullins. But Kyle Shanahan is usually pretty good scheming things open and finding ways to do things. He really had nothing going against these guys. And that concerns me a little bit.
Just to back up, Pro Football Focus, I know it has its benefits and its drawbacks, but it does confirm what you're saying about Chase Young. He's on a pretty clear upward trend over the past 3 weeks. The past 3 weeks have been pretty much 3 of his best 4 defensive performances of the year. So he's on an upward trajectory for them for sure.
We are not a Washington podcast, but I got to say, Jeff, if I was a Washington fan, if you put Justin Herbert on this team or you put Tua on this team in place of Chase Young, I think the Washington's walking away with this division. Like, as good as Chase Young is, I don't think they needed a 4th pass rusher versus a quarterback. If you put a good quarterback or a decent quarterback on this team,
what would their record be if Alex Smith had been playing all year long?
I think they'd be above 500, but maybe just
I think so too.
Like 7-5 instead of 5-7 or whatever they are.
I agree.
I agree, Brian. But in any scenario, we've talked about it a lot when we argue like who is responsible, the LOB or Russell Wilson. A quarterback, no matter how good a defense is, a quarterback is always incredibly more valuable. They're the most important position in the league. And like the Niners made the same mistake they had. They were building a team and they took Solomon Thomas instead of Deshaun Watson and Mahomes in that year. And imagine where the Niners would be right now if they had, say, Deshaun Watson.
That's painful to think about.
That's not. They fucked up.
Like,
don't worry, they're gonna fix the mistake this offseason with Dak.
That's like manna from heaven.
But it's just like, yeah, I agree. Well, if you ever can get a quarterback, like, because now Washington still goes into the offseason with this great defensive line, and they're not going to have a high pick. And how do you fix the quarterback position?
So I want to talk a little bit about. Oh, go ahead, Evan. Go ahead. You got a thought.
I just wanted to ask both of you guys. Like, I don't follow Washington super closely, but what's going on with Dwayne Haskins? Like, is he just not good? Because
he's not good.
Coming out of college, he was.
There's an interesting story there, though. Like, if you from the player standpoint, you've seen, I think, check me on this, but I've seen a number of players both on the team and off the team, more off the team, speak up in support of Haskins because their point of view is that as a black quarterback, he got a quicker hook than there's a bunch of crappy, white quarterbacks out there that are left to try to figure it out throughout the league. And they would go out there and I saw it. It's like, you're telling me that, I can't remember some of the guys that were playing in Jacksonville or some of the guys playing in some of the other places where they're like these guys are better than Haskins. Why isn't he getting more of a chance? So I think there's some support.
So here's the backstory from what I understand. Last year, they had a different coaching staff, and the coaching staff did not want to draft him. It was Jay Gruden. They did not want to draft him. That pick was purely ownership driven. And Brian knows a lot about Dan Snyder. He's talked between John Schneider. When Ron Rivera was hired, I heard this on a podcast, he had to kind of give a fake story of I'll give Dwayne Haskins a chance. We'll give him every opportunity. It was kind of like when Mike McCarthy said he studied the entire Dallas playbook when he never did. And apparently it was just very disingenuous. And from the moment he got there, Rivera did not like Dwayne Haskins. There was something about his attitude. They benched him during the year because apparently he was bragging about his stats after a 30-point loss. And this coaching staff really just never gave him a shot. And the players do seem to like him. There's a lot of guys in the media who have support of him, but this coaching staff he was never their guy. They never seemed to go to bat for him. And the second they could yank him, it seemed like that was a purely ownership-driven pick. And they're like, well, we gave him a chance and it didn't work. And basically he was their first card to play. And you can see it. This regime has done well with black quarterbacks, and Cam Newton was Rivera's guy his whole tenure. And he, for whatever reason, I don't know Haskins. I don't know much about him, but they didn't mesh.
Well, it's interesting you brought up Cam Newton. That was the first name that I thought of as would be an interesting bridge option for the Washington team next year. Ron Rivera reunited. Could be an interesting. I mean, they don't need. I don't know if they even need a great quarterback to be a contending team, at least in the.
They can get Jimmy G.
East. Yeah, maybe. Hey, so let's talk two things. Like, one, I do want to talk about the defense, because the defense is, as much as we're frustrated with the offense, the defense has been doing a lot of good things. So we should talk about that. But before we do, let's talk about some of the injury news and some of just the roster news in general. So we already talked about Rashad Penny. I think we're all hoping that he plays. My read of the way Pete's talking about it is that Rashad Penny will practice like he's going to play this week. I don't think he's going to be active. That's my read. I hope I'm wrong. I would love to see him back on the field, but that's my read. The other piece, Quentin Dunbar. Quentin Dunbar will be practicing to play this week. And the way Pete sounded in the presser today, someone asked him, is Dunbar going to roll back out there? And Pete was pretty hesitant. And Pete's been we've talked about it on this show. He's been pretty guarded about Dunbar for a while now. My expectation is that he's going to play, but he's going to rotate with DJ Reed.
Has he been the biggest disappointment this year of a Seahawks player? Has there been a more disappointing?
I think Russell's been more disappointing.
Really? I mean, I understand Russell, shat an egg for 6 weeks. I'm not disputing that. But at least I had very high expectations for Dunbar entering the year. And we never even saw – I don't think we ever saw Dunbar playing at, like, the level that we were hoping for.
I would agree with you.
I saw enough from Dunbar early in the season, like in his first 2 games, even his first 2 or 3 games, where I was like, okay, I can see him picking up steam, where a lot of it seems to me injury related. So it's hard for me when it's injury related. It's hard for me to be as disappointed. It's like Darrell Taylor. Like, is he the most disappointing? Sure. But, I don't even know what we have there. So it's hard to say that that's disappointing.
I just don't feel like he's played very well when healthy, unless you're insinuating that when he has played,
it's the second week of the season. His knee injury happened very early, and he's been playing with it since. So, I mean, yes, compared to I see people in the chat talking about Philip Dorsett. Like, yeah, of course, there's guys that have been disappointing.
Not disappointment. He got injured.
Yeah, I mean, and plus Philip Dorsett was like a low grade signing. He was he was like a wide receiver 4 or 5.
I think there's a case for Benson.
Ooh.
For Benson Mayo. I think there's a case for Quandre Diggs.
See, he's really come on lately, I think.
He's been better, but he hasn't been great.
Benson
I thought Quandre Diggs was a Pro Bowl potential safety. And
we're idiots. I know who it is. I think it's Shaquille Griffin.
He's
not for me. He's what I thought he was. For you,
okay, fair. Relative to my hopes and expectations. Yeah.
Mine's Dunbar. Yeah. I think mine has to be Dunbar. I can't get that Buffalo game out of my head. I know he was injured. That was like the worst game I've ever seen a cornerback play.
Who's been the biggest overachiever?
Shell.
Brandon Shell. That's probably the easy one. Let's take that as a given. Who else?
Ugo Amadi.
Ugo's up there. Huna's got to be up there.
Huna, we all liked him, but he's playing at Pro Bowl level, right?
We love that big poo. We love it.
Another one.
Jason Myers.
Yeah.
Awesome. Oh, Brian, say it. Jason Myers has been so damn good this year. That 61-yard field goal was like pure orgasm.
Yeah.
What about Dwayne Brown?
Yeah, he's been good. He's definitely been great. He's been good before. I think Trey Flowers belongs on that list.
I think he does too.
I mean, my expectations were below the floor for that guy.
Just the beginning of the season, that Dallas game was so bad.
Yes, but Jeff, there was like a 3 or 4 week stretch where Trey Flowers was actually playing well.
What about DJ Reed?
Yeah, but I don't know if he's overachieved. Or like we don't know what we had with DJ Reed. That's like when Justin Coleman came in and he was good. It was like, oh, that's awesome.
How about Posick?
Posick for me is just I'm
not
where anyone else is. To me, he is a guy. He's filling the role. He's doing his job.
Would you extend him?
No.
Okay, at what number would you keep him?
So hard in a vacuum to know without other roster positions. Like in general, I would hope that you wouldn't keep him. I would hope that you'd spend the money elsewhere.
Where's Jaron Reed on this list?
He's roughly what I thought he was going to be. To be totally honest, he's going to end up with 3 to 6 sacks, you know, and be like a good run defender and a solid starter. He's not a like top line player, but
yeah, you know who's fizzled out pretty hard? Quentin Jefferson.
Yes, he has. LJ Collier.
We're talking about the Seahawks on this podcast.
Yes. LJ Collier. He probably belongs in the overachievement category for this crew. There are some
that's not saying much, but
there are some pretty low expectations for him.
What about Jamal?
I mean,
that's the most interesting one, isn't it? Like, forget about compensation. Don't talk to me about whether he's worth.
No, but it's relative to what your expectations and hopes were for him, right? Like my expectations and hopes were pretty high when we traded.
Broke the record for most sacks ever by a defensive back in the entire history of the NFL.
In 9 games.
In 9 games.
I'm not saying he hasn't been successful.
And he's been actually like in the last 3 games, he's been way less like used as just a crazy blitzer and like what he's been a safety who played some in the box. He only blitzed 6 times last week against the Jets.
So your argument is he's overachieved for us.
I think he's met my expectations. I think he's roughly been at an all-pro level.
I would agree with that. That's where I am. Yeah, I wasn't arguing he was underachieving.
What do you think, Jeff?
I'd say I think this was more the usage with him, and I think it hindered him. I think this is where we were so critical of Ken Norton before. I think their usage of him in the beginning was really bad, and I think they left the defense out to dry, and they were way too obvious. I think now that they've kind of figured him out and settled him in, he's playing closer to what I expected. But I don't think he's quite at all-pro level because of his coverage play. But I think he's been good. I don't think he's been a disappointment. Outside of competition, I think he's been fine. I think he's made a difference.
What about Jordan Brooks?
Met expectations, I think.
Matt, he's average.
I think he's a little below for me.
He's starting to come on a little bit, but
he's starting to come on.
I think Adams is a guy that can change a playoff game, and I think that's.
I want to give pre-fight donut a cred. Ryan Neal's a good one for overachieve.
Now,
Derek kind of came out on it.
One in the chat. That's a really good question. Has Tyler Lockett underachieved this year?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
He had a couple of big games, and other than that, he's been quiet.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think Will Dissly's another name where it's like,
I don't know. He can't like those back-to-back surgeries. It's hard to.
It is. Greg Olsen.
He underachieved. I was very high on him, and I was wrong.
Yeah.
I thought he would be a very good addition. He's made 1 or 2 plays all year.
Carlos Hyde, overachiever.
He's been. I just don't get it. I don't get like what I see with Carlos Hyde is when there's a hole, he hits it and he gets yards.
Well, I think that's what he was signed for. He's insurance.
Like he's a serviceable back. Like there's nothing about him that's like, yeah, that guy's overachieving to me. I would say DJ Dallas is underachieved a little bit to me.
Yeah, I think so.
Another one in the chat. Damian Lewis is an obvious overachiever.
Yep.
Yep. Yeah.
Let's keep on the injury thing. So we just talked about Greg Olsen. Greg Olsen.
Sidetrack.
No, that was actually fun. That was fun. Greg Olsen is practicing this week, and there's a chance he will play this week. My first question for you guys is that good news? Evan?
I'm like mind blown. I'm absolutely mind blown that he has a chance to play this week. Like, I am 25 years old. When I was getting up off the couch today, my leg cracked and it really hurt. And I've been limping ever since. Like, this guy is a freaking machine. I am so grateful genuinely that injury was not his last down as an NFL player for such an accomplished player as him. I think it's kind of I think we're underselling how big of a deal it is that he's coming back this week, actually. I know I feel like you said he's underperformed, Jeff, but he has been a safety outlet for Russell. And, in the past 6 weeks, Greg Olsen has been one of those missing names. So who knows?
What do you think, Jeff?
I would probably ease him in a little bit. I'd probably give him the week off, get him ready for the Rams game.
Yeah, but is it good news?
Is it good news? Yes, because I'll tell you one reason. I can't stand watching Jacob Hollister play.
Really?
I don't. Yeah.
Strong feelings about Jacob Hollister. That is amazing.
It brings back memories of like the bad 2019 Seahawks team where he was their third option in the passing game. He gets tackled really easily. He makes a play here and there, but like he just seems like a guy that should be playing on a good team. He seems like a guy who should be on the Jets, racking up like bad numbers. And having a guy who's a pro, knows what he's doing, and having him and Disley. See, I'd rather just play Parkinson. At least he has the upside.
Well, to me, that's the issue is
I don't like Jacob Hollister.
I would like to see Parkinson getting some snaps. I liked what I saw last week.
I said that in the chat like 3 weeks ago. Everyone looked at me like I was nuts.
He had one catch.
He had 3 catches.
Did he really have to? Oh, he's just a tall body. Like,
nah, he was an interesting prospect. He was like a first-round prospect a couple years ago.
Got good hands. He broke some tackles. Like, anyway.
I don't like Hollister.
I don't know.
I like David Moore. I don't like Hollister.
My head tells me it's good news that he's back. My heart tells me I wish we were going to see more Colby Parkinson. So we're going to take some Patreon questions, and Evan, you're going to be the MC for this, but I do want to admit that in all my malaise about the Seahawks, I forgot that Josh Gordon was coming back next week. I lost sight of that, and I'm actually
busted a pod on him.
I'm looking forward to that. Like, I'm looking for. I think like more than they've needed him in the past, first half of the season. I think I'm really intrigued by what he can mean for this offense, and I think based on what Pete said today, it sounds like there's a better than 50% chance he'll suit up against the Rams. The Rams won't know how they're going to use him, so I'm hopeful about that. That's a next week comment, but I did want to get it out there for this week. All right, Evan. People sign up over at patreon.com/hawkblogger, and they get instant access to our Slack channel. Lots of good conversation going on there. It's $5. Come on, dude. Sign up. Seahawks getting ready for their playoff run. What were the questions we have this week?
Yeah, so we got quite a few.
All right, pick some highlights and target, rapid fire at one of us, and including yourself.
Brian, I'm going to start with you. I think this is a really good question, but I'm going to tweak it just slightly. It says, do you feel good about our playoff chances with a victory over the Washington football team, or do you need to see them beat the Rams first? So I'm going to tweak the question and say, do you feel good about our playoff chances with a victory over the Washington football team if they win with the offense piling on points? So if they win in the way that, it would inspire the most positivity in you, do you still need to see it against the Rams, or where's your head
at? If they score 30 plus points against this Washington defense, I will be feeling encouraged about their potential, and it will have probably been their most impressive offensive performance if they're able to do that to date. So do I also need to see them perform well against the Rams? I think the Rams defense is far tougher for the Seahawks team because of the talent that the Rams throw out there in the secondary, and how they can match up. So yes, I would need to see it against a team that has a stout secondary, not just a stout pass rush, and that would be the Rams.
Jeff, this one is for you. Why are the Hawks so slow to adjust to opposing defenses. Was the admission by Shoddy as infuriating to you as it was to me? Who is this guy speaking?
Yeah, absolutely. Because anyone who watched that Giants game could see a trend that teams were taking away the deep ball, and they kept trying to run long developing routes against a very good defensive line that could blow it up. And Russell was not comfortable. He was jittery, and it was a pattern. I think the Seahawks are just of the belief. They come from more of a mindset, not like Bill Belichick, where they're more shapeshifters and play to opponent. Pete's philosophy, and I think Shoddy is a bit this way too, is this is what we do and this is how we win. And they want to say, we don't care about our opponent. We dictate the terms. And I think that's how they try to play too often. And they try to say, we're a deep ball passing team. This is how we win. This is Russell's strength. Pete loves chunk plays. It's his philosophy. And they try to win that way instead of saying, okay, this team can be beat otherwise. And I think Pete has done this over and over for years. I think that's just his philosophy defensively as well. He says, we play coverage. We simplify coverage. We want our players to play fast. We don't adjust too much. They didn't really blitz a lot of the early years. And I think that's just his philosophy. And I think that's deep rooted in the whole coaching staff.
Ryan, I'm going to throw this one at you. We've got 3 more, including this one. With Dunbar and Penny coming off of IR, whose roster spots are on the chopping block?
So I'm pretty sure Lyndon Stevens is still on the roster. I think he even got some snaps against the Jets. So he would be one option. I think that there's also some from a running back situation. It's a good question. I'd actually have to pull up the roster to take a look, but
would they cut Travis Homer?
I would IR him.
Put him on IR. I don't know if he hasn't been put on IR yet, right?
No, he's still on the roster. That would be
obvious. That would be the obvious move, is to put Homer on IR, and then you have a chance if you want to pull him back for the playoffs.
Mm-hmm. Okay. This one's directed to me. Does Evan believe if Penny plays well down the stretch, that will impact the decision on whether or not Carson is a high priority for the Hawks this offseason? Normally, I would respond yes to this question, but I believe the Seahawks have already made a decision on what to do with Chris Carson. There have been an extreme lack of rumors going around about any extension talks with Carson. I think they have already made a decision on him, and I think it's to let him walk. I don't think Carson is going to be back next year. Last question I will give to you, Jeff. Against a stingy, actually no, Brian, I'm going to throw this one back to you. Against a stingy Washington football team defense, the Seahawks are favored by 5.5. Do you think they cover the spread? For our betting listeners.
I haven't even thought about my prediction yet for this game.
We're reading the prediction segment.
Yeah. I'm going to go with yes.
Ooh.
Spread.
That's optimistic. I feel like
it is.
You're believing again?
It really pisses me off that I'm feeling that way. Yeah.
Why are you feeling that way? Like, what did your mind first go to?
Because I am most upset at the wasted opportunity for this team and the way that they completely blew their opportunity. Mm-hmm. I still fundamentally believe this is a really good team. and I've seen evidence of them, kind of coming out of it a little bit. And so, against all good reason, I have a feeling that the offense might show up this week. God, so annoying that my hopes are getting up. So
you've become emotionally attached again. You're in prime position for complete disappointment.
That Jets game with zero emotion, zero. Like, I just sat back there and just observed, and it was so relaxing. It's not as enjoyable, but it was so relaxing. And this team punishes you for caring. They punish you for caring.
That's a really succinct way of describing the Seahawks.
Yeah.
They punish you for caring.
All right.
That's our questions.
No. All right. Cool. Well, let's Let's get some predictions. Was there any other injury news before we get to predictions that I'm forgetting? I don't remember anything.
Dunlap? Do we know anything on Dunlap?
Dunlap is going to be, they won't know to the end of the week. He's planning to play. The team's kind of figuring. Honestly, that is one of the more concerning injury situations. It doesn't sound like, similar to maybe Chris Carson, doesn't sound like something that's just going to get better. It sounds like they're going to have to hope that he can manage it. But bottom of his foot, some kind of issue.
Carlos Dunlap is planning to play.
Yes.
I just hope it doesn't limit his effectiveness.
Yeah, because he was not that good when he played the week before.
Because we saw with Clowney last year down the stretch, when he was hurt, he was just a non-factor.
Do you guys? So it's looking like Dwayne Haskins probably will play. Not certain yet, but Alex Smith will not. How much does that affect your opinion about Seahawks' chances in this game?
I'll be honest, it does a lot. Alex Smith is like a huge upgrade over Dwayne Haskins. Like, Alex Smith has not been bad this year. Like, he's been decent for them. I think the difference between a decent and really bad quarterback for Washington could decide this game. I don't think that's crazy.
Yeah, and the thing with Alex Smith is he's like very conservative and safe, and he knows what he's doing. He can read a defense. He's seen it all. He's not a big play guy. They're not going to take shots down the field. He's checked down Alex. That's his thing. He always has high completion percentage. Haskins is kind of up and down. And if you watch Daniel Jones play against Arizona last week, Haskins is of that mold where it's just like he's all over the map. Like, he could turn the ball over at any point. He's the exact opposite of Alex Smith, but with a low ceiling. So,
I mean, the Seahawks defense should have had 21 points last week.
Yeah, like the drop that Amadi had, the drop that Jamal had.
Amadi, Jamal, Puna.
Can these dudes not catch a fucking football?
Jamal's was so bad.
Like,
oh my God.
Like, Brian, you would have caught that football.
Oh, 100. Yeah. I've got faults, but I've got decent hands. Yeah. I mean, I would get destroyed in seconds, but I would catch the football. All right, let's talk about predictions for this game. Evan, what happens in this game? What's the final score?
Seahawks return to their offensive drought. I think Washington wins this football game. 23-13.
Wow.
23-13.
I'm not like I said earlier on this podcast, what they did against the Jets is what they should have done. And yes, it was a step in the right direction, but this Washington defense is legitimately a really good defense. And if they can get to Russ and if Brandon Shell is out, which I think he will be, it's going to make it really difficult for Seattle. And do I trust Shoddy to adapt on the fly and, scheme receivers open early? I'm not so sure. Do I trust Russell Wilson to reliably have a strong performance on Sunday? I can't believe I'm saying this, but I don't. And that sucks. I don't like feeling this way, but
I think it's justified.
But they haven't done enough to earn my confidence back yet. And I'm talking specifically about the offense. So that's a bummer prediction, but it's what I think happens.
Respect. All right, Jeff.
I do think the Seahawks win the game. I think just Washington's offensive limitations are very obvious, especially if Smith doesn't play. But I don't think they cover the spread, and I think it's going to be a slog, ugly, all of us pulling our hair out for 3 hours kind of game where the Seahawks do struggle, similar to what Evan said, but I think they just have the talent advantage that gives them the edge in this game. So I say it is 17-13 Seattle wins.
If that's the score, I'm not any more confident than I am right now about the Seahawks.
No, I've just seen this game too many times where they play Carolina.
Like that's a one and done like Seahawks team in the playoffs.
That's where I'm at. Until I see them play well against a good defense.
Yeah.
I'm in that mode.
So, man, I don't know why I feel this way. I'm going to try to figure it out, but here's what I'm expecting to happen. I think the Seahawks win 27-7. And a big part of the reason I think that is because I really think the Washington offense is going to struggle. I think the Seahawks defense has reached a new level of performance. And I'm saying these words and imagining them coming back to haunt me on Twitter clips, but I think that they're due for their first defensive touchdown of the season. I think the defense could be part of the points that get scored. I think if Quentin Dunbar plays, that could mean that DJ Reed gets to be part of the return game, and the Washington actual kickoff coverage is pretty bad. I think DJ Reed is just an inch away from breaking one of these returns every time he's been back there. So I'd like to see that. And I think that the offense will be balanced and good enough. I think that we're going to see a little bit of the run, and I think we're going to see a little bit of the pass. And I don't think that the Washington secondary can handle DK Metcalf on a slant. I don't think that their nickel corner can handle Tyler Lockett. And maybe, just maybe, Rashad Penny, maybe we have not had explosive play from a running back. Fresh legs come in. Yes, they're injured legs recovering, but there's been a lot of positive reports about how he's looked in practice. So, yeah, it's odd for me to say. I think most of it has to do with I just don't respect that Washington offense, and I think the Seahawks defense is playing well. I think it's going to put Seattle in a lot of plus positions to put points on the board, and that's why I have them winning by a fair amount. So, anything else we missed, fellas, before we sign off for the night?
Please stay healthy on this field. This field is a nightmare.
Oh. I see someone taunting me about saying that the defense is going to score for 8 straight weeks. It's because it's going to happen. It's going to eventually happen. I'm going to be right.
They scored twice last week.
They should have scored at least twice last week. All right, fellas. Hey, if folks, you haven't already clicked subscribe, please do. Click the bell to get notified when we go live. Go over to patreon.com/hawkblogger, sign up. And if you haven't already, go try to find these Cutwater. Where is it? Come on, green screen. Help me. It doesn't want to. It's invisible. Now, see if they joined us as a full-fledged partner, these problems would go away. Let's see if I can do this. There. Go ahead and get some Cutwater Vodka Mules. They're excellent. I certainly enjoyed mine. Thanks for sending me the pack. I greatly appreciate it. And folks, we're just a few weeks away from the playoffs, and we are 1 week away from what is going to be a division deciding game against the Rams. So a lot to talk about. Looking forward to seeing you over at the Slack channel on patreon.com/hawkblogger. Until then, until this weekend where we do the post-game show, good night and go Hawks.